Actually, Veronica is going with me. As I waited at the airport curbside pickup keys hanging from my fingers and my pulse thumping with anticipation, my husband made the announcement. You'll never be as interesting as she is. Celeste Morgan is my name, and I am 39 years old. I am the director of marketing for Portland, Oregon's Crimson Harbor Group, a small hospitality consulting business. I had spent the last 3 months organizing what I believed would be the ideal surprise for our 10th wedding anniversary. A romantic week-long vacation to Italy at a cost of about $15,000 of my own money. First-class flights, a lavish home with views of Florence and the Arno River, private wine excursions in Tuscany, and reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants were all carefully planned. I spent weeks doing research. I had been so pleased with myself and thrilled to witness Thomas's reaction when I told him about the surprise. I pictured him embracing me and telling me how much he loved me and how considerate I was. Thomas claimed to be the most intelligent man alive as he stood there with his secretary Veronica, a 26-year-old blonde who giggled at everything and wore skirts that barely covered her thighs. You, with a tone full of condescension, Thomas went on. All you do is take me to museums and discuss architecture with me. There should be a lot of fun on this vacation. With her immaculately manicured hand resting possessively on his arm, Veronica giggled next to him. She was dressed like I used to be before I got married, before I gave comfort precedence over fashion, before I allowed myself to become what Thomas seemed to think was predictable. I stood there for a while trying to comprehend what was going on. In essence, the man I had been married to for 10 years and loved for 13 was telling me that I wasn't worthy of the surprise. I had been preparing for him for months. He was going on our anniversary trip with another woman, wooing someone else with my money, my plans, and my considerate actions. With the casual indifference of someone talking about the weather, Thomas checked his watch and stated, "The car service will be here any minute. You should probably go home, get takeout, and watch one of your favorite period dramas." A chill took hold of my chest. Not heartache, not yet, but something more hazardous and pointy. When I actually looked at my spouse, I saw a stranger in the face of the man I had thought would always be my husband. The casual brutality in his speech, the way he hardly looked at me, and his contemptuous smile. It felt like the first time in years that I had seen him clearly. I remained silent. I just gave him the written schedule I had painstakingly created, nodded, and watched them leave in the town car I had reserved. They vanished in the direction of the airport, their laughter resonating through the tinted windows. I felt as though I was hovering outside of my own body, witnessing someone else's life break apart throughout the strange trip home from the airport. At a downtown Portland wine tasting 14 years prior, I had met Thomas. He had a way of making me feel like the most fascinating lady in the room, and he was charming and ambitious. He climbed the corporate ladder at a mid-sized investment business with the kind of merciless ambition that appealed to me. 25 years old. Our courtship had been filled with lavish gifts, romantic dinners, and weekend vacations that made me feel valued. With a 2-carat diamond ring and assurances of a lovely future for the first few years of their marriage, he proposed on Christmas morning. I believed that we were creating a unique connection founded on respect, love, and common goals. However, things had changed sometime along the line. Thomas's confidence had turned into condescension, and his ambition became arrogance. He began to put in more hours at work, spend more time with coworkers, and treat our house like a hotel, sleeping here and there. I had ascribed the distance to stress his work-related demands and the organic development of a committed relationship. I reminded myself that there were difficult times in every marriage. I could now see the warning indicators I had chosen to ignore. When I mentioned my work, he rolled his eyes. The subtly offensive remarks that are passed off as jokes during dinner parties. The growing number of times he brought up Veronica. How intelligent she was, how effective. She had a deeper understanding of the industry than most individuals did. 6 months prior, I had even met her at the office holiday party. She listened intently to everything Thomas said and laughed a little too loudly when he told her stories. She is rather young. On the way home that evening, I had told Thomas about it. Young people have new perspectives. As though 39 was ancient, he had said that people our age occasionally forget our age. As like I had failed in some way by not staying frozen at 26 forever. I had been too engrossed in the fairy story to notice the signs, but they had been there. I hadn't realized how much effort I had put into trying to be the ideal wife, preparing lavish meals, keeping up a lovely house, and advancing my career while sustaining his. I was no longer a partner to him. Instead, I was an obligation. I sat in the car for a while as I pulled into our driveway, gazing at the house we had purchased together 5 years prior. The front entrance, the garden I had tended so tenderly. Thomas stated sage green was elegant, so I painted it. I had thought that one day we might be able to see our kids play in the yard from the bay window. Everything seemed to be proof that I had been living alone. But something else was bubbling beneath the shame and pain. I was taken aback by the depth of the cold, calculated rage that mingled with what seemed suspiciously like relief. As soon as I entered our home, I contacted Patricia, my travel agent, who had assisted me in setting up every aspect of the Italian schedule. I dialed her number with unusually steady hands. When she replied, "Patricia, this is Celeste Morgan." I spoke in a cool, collected tone. "I have to make some adjustments to the reservation for Italy. We talked about it." "Of course, my love. How may I assist you?" "Everything must be changed from my husband's name to mine. Everything: reservations, the restaurant, the car service, the villa, the flights, etc." A pause occurred. "My goodness, is everything okay?" I said. "Everything is perfect." And I meant it for the first time in hours. "How soon are you able to make these adjustments? It should be quite simple though, given everything was reserved with your credit card." "I can transfer everything in an hour." "Do I need to cancel?" "Did Mr. Morgan get a ticket?" "Sure, please." "And instead, put a guest under my name, Webb Catherine, a accomplished architect who lived with me in college." Catherine had been advising me for years that I needed to spend more time for myself. She had mentioned how much she needed a vacation after finishing a big project. When she learned the situation, I knew she would abandon everything for an impromptu vacation to Italy. I called Catherine after I hung up with Patricia. On the second ring, she answered, "This surprises me, Celeste. Shouldn't you be preparing for your romantic vacation in Italy? Plans have changed." I said, "What kind of week in Tuscany would you like to have? Wine excursions, first-class flights, and a luxurious property." "The process. Are you serious, Thomas? What happened to him?" I summarized for her what had happened that afternoon. In her prompt and colorful response, Catherine used a number of terms that would have made Thomas clutch his pearls and give her a lesson about professionalism. "That fucking bastard," she concluded. "I'll come, of course. What time do we depart?" "Tonight's flights are at 6. Are you able to attend? In 3 hours, I'll be at the airport, armed with my passport and a voracious appetite for Italian wine, while imagining inventive ways to do retribution." I sat in my living room after I hung up with Catherine and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: unadulterated, pure thrill. I was genuinely excited about the possibility of going on an adventure with my best buddy, rather than feeling the nervous anticipation I had been experiencing about surprising Thomas. For the next 2 hours, I packed, picking out things that I truly wanted to wear rather than ones that I hoped would appeal to my husband. Thomas had always detested the red dress, which I included, claiming it was too daring for a person my age. He said the hiking boots weren't feminine, so I packed them. He claimed that I seemed pretentious because of the vintage like a camera. Additionally, he dismissed the art history book collection as uninteresting. I was prepared by 400s. I arrived at the airport at 5 o'clock, boarding pass in hand, and as I allowed every contact to go to voicemail, I kept seeing Thomas's phone number flash on my screen. The first-class cabin was like a luxurious cocoon. With champagne flutes in hand, Catherine and I took our seats. I didn't miss the irony. I had been dreaming of a romantic holiday in Italy, and now I was actually there. However, not with the individual I had initially intended to share. It has. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Catherine tucked her legs under herself and murmured, "Tell me everything. Don't omit any information. Start at the beginning. I'd like to know exactly how we went from a surprise anniversary vacation to a Tuscany girls' weekend, while your spouse is most likely stuck at the airport." I filled her in on everything, including Thomas's casual brutality at the curbside pickup and the months of meticulous planning. After 15 years of living in different cities, Catherine listened with the kind of focused attention that made me remember why we had stayed good friends. "What's the worst thing you know?" As I swirled my glass of champagne, I spoke. I wasn't shocked at all. I was hurt. Angry, embarrassed, yes, but I'm not shocked. I believe I've been aware for months that something wasn't right and that he was retreating. I simply reminded myself that it was only temporary, that everything would return to normal if I put in more effort, made better plans, loved more, and did everything flawlessly. Catherine grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "That's not how love works, isn't it? You don't have to compromise yourself for someone else's comfort in order to experience true love. Intellectually, I understand that, but when you're living it, when you're seeing your marriage slowly fall apart, and you're unable to identify what went wrong, it's different. As Portland's lights dimmed below us, I continued to stare out the window. Catherine remarked plainly, "What you did wrong was marry a man who stopped seeing you as a person. Thomas has been treating you like a supporting player in his life story for years, based on what you've told me. The issue isn't that he took his secretary along on your anniversary trip. It is only a symptom." Thomas called me again and my phone buzzed. I noticed that I had missed 17 calls in the last 2 hours when I looked at the screen. Voicemails piled up, each one likely more desperate than the one before it. "Do you not want to hear what he has to say?" With a look toward my phone, Catherine questioned. "Not especially. He must have understood by now that none of the reservations have their names on them, that the auto repair won't arrive, that their reservation is not on file at the villa. I've allegedly broken something and he's calling to yell at me to fix it. Every single detail was transferred to your name. Since the flights were already in the air, that was the only thing I was unable to alter. The property, the vehicle service, the bookings for restaurants, the wine excursions, and even the private chef I hired for 2 nights, however, were all extras. Everything is now in my name." Other people turned to look at Catherine as she burst out laughing. "Celeste, my God. They only have the clothing on their backs and whatever money they carried with them when they arrive in Florence. No plans, no hotel, no transportation. Thomas always took great satisfaction in his ability to manage any circumstance." I said, "We'll see how he responds to this." My chest began to relax when the flight attendant stopped by to replenish our champagne. Pay attention. It hadn't even occurred to me that I was pregnant for the first time in months or perhaps years. Thomas's reaction to what I had done didn't concern me. I wasn't planning my defenses, expecting his criticism or figuring out how to word things to get his acceptance. As we settled down for the lengthy journey, I told Catherine, "You know what the really crazy part is? Right now, I feel more like myself than I have in years." "Is that awful?" Catherine answered firmly. "That's not terrible. We refer to that as waking up." At 7 a.m., we touched down in Florence, local time, and I had the impression that I was entering a new chapter in my life. It was warm and beautiful in the morning light, in a way that made me realize how gray my world had grown. The air smelled of coffee and old stones, and everything around me felt alive and colorful. After a smooth customs process, Catherine and I discovered our driver waiting with my name on a placard. When I booked Luigi, he was just what I had hoped for. Charming, informed, and thrilled to be chauffeuring 2 American women who were obviously eager for a good time. His smile wrinkled the corners of his eyes as he continued, "Signora Morgan, welcome to Firenze. This week has been something I have been anticipating. Your villa is stunning. You'll adore it." It was an amazing drive through Florence. After passing the Duomo, which rose majestically against the dawn sky over the Ponte Vecchio with its dazzling jewelry shops, we meandered through winding lanes studded with Renaissance architecture. Like a child, Catherine put her face against the window, pointing out architectural elements and taking pictures with her phone. "We're going to spend it listening to Thomas whine about wanting to find American food and walking too much, and I can't believe you planned all this," she added. Since we landed, my phone had been vibrating nonstop. The voicemail symbol indicated that I had more messages than I could count, and the number of missed calls had increased to the 30s. My curiosity finally overcame me as we arrived at the villa. "Do you remember what I told Catherine? I believe I'm prepared to listen to Thomas's thoughts." As Luigi took our things to the entryway of the villa, I put the first voicemail on speaker. "What the devil is happening, Celeste?" When we arrived at the hotel, they informed us that they did not have a reservation in my name. "Clearly an error of some sort has occurred. Give me a call back right now." The second message: "This is crazy. The auto repair never arrived. The hotel is now claiming that everything is reserved in your name rather than mine. Regardless of the type of game you're playing, you must immediately correct this." Thomas's voice had taken on the sharp edge that I knew indicated he was genuinely shaken by the 5th message. "I am aware that you are receiving these communications, Celeste. Everything on this agenda has your name on it, so we're trapped at the airport with nowhere to go and no means to get in touch with the contacts. You're spoiling what could have been a pleasant vacation with this juvenile and spiteful behavior." Catherine laughed so hard she was almost crying. "Oh, I've never seen a finer revenge film than this one. In the absence of your organizing abilities, he is totally defenseless." The fascinating part came in the 10th message. Thomas's voice was smaller and less authoritative. See, I may have been hurried before. We might be able to come to an agreement. I'd be happy to share the accommodations with you, as would Veronica. Together we could solve this problem. Do you mind sharing the accommodations? With disbelief, Catherine repeated. He wants you to pay for a trip so you may see him flirt with his secretary. Their irate demands turned into frustrated bargaining, which turned into something that was on the verge of panic, and the messages kept getting worse. We just had 20 minutes to listen to the last message, Thomas said in a tight voice, his desperation scarcely contained. Tell me, Celeste, please. We have no hotel, no car, and no plan as we sit in the airport. I seem like a fool, and Veronica is crying. Just give me a call back, please. We can discuss this. This is something we can resolve. Catherine was wiping tears of laughter from her eyes when I looked at her. Then I gazed at the gorgeous villa with its climbing roses and terracotta roof in front of us, its perspective of the Arno River, which sparkles in the early morning light. What do you know? I said, putting my phone in my purse and setting it to quiet. I'm going to let them sort it out, I think. Even my well-considered expectations were surpassed by the villa. It was a 16th century palazzo that had been remodeled, including marble flooring, frescoed ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto terraces with a view of the river. The afternoon light cast amber and gold hues on everything, and we had a private balcony in our suite with a view of the Ponte Vecchio in the distance. That helped me to see why Florence had been a destination for our artists for ages. The chaise lounge on the balcony was promptly claimed by Catherine, who announced her desire to read and sip wine during the afternoon. A chic woman named Francesca. The villa's concierge came on our door as I was unloading. I hope everything is going well for you, Signora Morgan. I wanted to personally greet you and make sure you had everything planned for the week. I said everything looks perfect, meaning it. Fantastic. I also wanted to let you know that someone posing as your husband called us multiple times this morning to inquire about your reservation. He appeared quite upset. We informed him that we are not allowed to share guest information with unapproved parties in accordance with our policy. With curiosity, Catherine raised her head from her book. He made several straight calls to the villa. Francesca attested to his insistence that there had been an error, and that he should have been staying here rather than with you. Since we had only been communicating with Signora Morgan, our staff was very perplexed. The idea that Thomas was attempting to persuade the villa employees that he wasn't gave me a rush of delight. I am deserving of this place. The man who had disregarded my capacity for preparation was now realizing just how meticulous I had been. I said, please don't feel obligated to take the calls if he calls again. Your privacy is our first priority, of course. Following Francesca's departure, Catherine and I spent the day strolling through the villa's grounds and enjoying the wine-cured meats and cheeses that were prepared for us. As the sun started to go down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years when the sky was painted in vivid pinks and oranges. Total satisfaction. I had gotten used to ignoring my phone's occasional buzzing. Thomas's messages seemed to come from a distant lifetime, from a version of myself who had thought that love required shrinking to fit the ego of another. May I ask you a question? On the terrace, Catherine and I were enjoying a bottle of Chianti. Will you get a divorce from him? I gave the question careful thought. The idea would have appalled me 24 hours ago. Despite our issues, I remained dedicated to the notion of our marriage and the conviction that with enough effort we could overcome any obstacle. I honestly answered, I don't know, but I know that I can't return to who I was the day before. I can't act as though the incident at the airport was only a miscommunication or a case of bad judgment. Thomas demonstrated to me how he views and values me, and I am aware that I am unable to do the same. How about Veronica? How about her? She is 26 years old and has fallen in love with a married man who recently demonstrated that he is prepared to make fun of his wife for her amusement. She will soon discover the type of person she is interacting with. Catherine lifted her glass in the direction of solving problems. With my glass clinking against hers and Florence's light starting to glimmer below, I nodded. That evening, lulled by the sound of the river and the realization that for the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, I slept better than I had in months. A message that altered everything arrived the following morning. My phone rang with a text from an unidentified Italian number while Catherine and I were eating breakfast on the terrace. Hey, this is Veronica, Mrs. Morgan. I need to talk to you, please. I acquired your number from Thomas's phone, but he won't tell me how to get in touch with you. The scenario we're in is dire. Catherine almost choked on her espresso when I gave her the note. You're getting texts from her. This girl's audacity is quite astounding. Immediately another message appeared. For the past 2 days, we have been sleeping in the airport. Thomas tried to book us hotels with all of his money. However, due to a festival, everything is full. I have to return to work tomorrow, but without the return tickets that are allegedly in your name, we are unable to even book flights home. Please, please, please. I felt a complex range of emotions as I gazed at the messages. I felt vindicated in part. I had hoped that Thomas would encounter precisely this kind of chaos. However, a different part of me, the part that had been conditioned by years of marriage to handle conflict and look out for everyone, experienced an unanticipated wave of pity for Veronica. Will you answer? Catherine inquired. I'm considering it. There was a third message. I am aware that our actions were improper. I'm simply a secretary who believed she was going on a pleasant vacation with a wealthy man, even though I know Thomas mistreated you. It wasn't until we were on the plane that I realized it was your anniversary trip. Don't make me pay for his errors, please. I was completely stunned by that message. It was our anniversary trip, but Thomas hadn't even mentioned it to Veronica. He had given her the impression that it was merely a light vacation, had permitted her to take part in my humiliation without even bothering to explain what she was doing. I'll surely be answering now. I spoke while navigating the phone's keyboard with my fingertips. You're right, Veronica, you didn't deserve to be misled about the purpose of this vacation. Thomas ought to have informed you that we were on vacation for our 10th anniversary. However, you are also a mature woman who made the decision to leave with a married man. I hope you learn from this experience to be more critical of the circumstances you find yourself in. After pausing, I added, your return tickets with confirmation number 7, A8, B9, and C are at the American Airlines counter. At 6 p.m. tonight, they go. Don't overlook them. Catherine looked with a mix of concern and admiration as I sent the message. Are you arranging for their return flights? I'm paying for her return airfare. She is 26 years old and made a poor choice. However, she doesn't deserve to be left stranded abroad as a result. However, Thomas is capable of figuring out how to get back on his own. My phone was ringing almost instantly. Thomas's phone number. I played the message on speaker Celeste after letting it go to voicemail. I'm glad Veronica got through to you. This has gone far enough, you see. We must have an adult conversation about this. You're being totally irrational, but I made a mistake. Christ forbid we're married. You can't simply abandon your spouse in Italy. Catherine gave a snort. Observe her. Once more the phone rang. I responded this time. Hi, Thomas. Heavenly, at last. Pay attention. We must get together. We must discuss this matter and determine our course of action. I acknowledge that my handling of the situation at the airport was subpar. Thomas, my voice was calmer than I felt when I interrupted. I provided Veronica with the details of your flights back. Tonight she is free to return home, but you're not allowed on those flights. What are you discussing? My tickets are those. They're actually my tickets. I purchased them. I transferred them to my name and planned them. I've given Veronica permission to use one of them. I own the other one. A long pause ensued. What should I do then? I advise you to give your secretary a call and request that she arrange you a fresh travel home. Oh, hold on. In 6 hours, your secretary, who is standing directly next to you, will board a plane to Portland. You can't take this seriously, Celeste. Never in my life have I taken anything more seriously. Thomas, I hope you travel home safely. I finally hung up and blocked his number right away. Catherine lifted her glass of wine. It was lovely, she said now. I came to the realization that sometimes the most meaningful retaliation isn't about destruction, as I thought back on my journey from dedicated wife to woman reclaiming her authority. It has to do with finding out, about having the fortitude to value yourself just as highly as you have been valuing everyone else.